We're just going to go step, left foot, step over, and then we're just going to try and guide the ball like that into the bottom corner.
Raheem Sterling's been keeping himself busy, not on the Premier League pitches, but in training the youth.
Right now we don't need to worry about the power, just focusing on shaping our body, our foot into that corner, right?
As for his own professional football training, we know he's not training with the first team at Chelsea, the club he's been with for 3 years now. This post from Instagram and an inquiry from the PFA showed us that he's very much isolated alongside Axel Disasi. I think it's safe to say that Sterling's signing kind of shaped how Chelsea now do their transfer business. He was the last of the old way, a big star on a massive contract. You don't see that anymore at Chelsea. He's earning about £300,000 to £325,000 per week, as the best estimates go, and yet he probably hasn't seen his teammates in the first team for some time. He isn't carrying an injury or a ban like Mykhailo Mudryk, but he isn't even available for selection in Chelsea's Champions League or Premier League squads. He is quite simply a forgotten man. Persona non grata, a pariah, and at an estimated £16.9 million per year, an extremely expensive ghost.
So some of them, if they are looking for meals, probably it's better to leave.
We all remember what happened just over a year ago when Raheem Sterling wasn't included in the squad for Chelsea's match against Manchester City, his former club, of course. But prior to Enzo Maresca excommunicating him alongside a few others, Sterling was used relatively frequently under Mauricio Pochettino before Maresca came along and said that he wasn't the kind of winger that he likes in his teams. He hasn't played a single minute for Maresca. He hasn't worn the Chelsea shirt in a competitive match for Maresca, nor in general since May of 2024. But again, before that, after making the move from Manchester City in the summer of 2022 for approximately £50 million, Boehly and Bluco's first summer in charge, he did feature regularly for Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter, and Frank Lampard, the trio who tried to steady the Chelsea ship that season. Sterling played 2,562 minutes that season, scoring 9 goals and getting 4 assists. No problem. Hectic season. Expectations were lessened a bit, and he was still tied for top goal scorer of the entire squad that season, across all competitions at least. Under Pochettino, he bettered those numbers. He was more available. He played 2,759 minutes, scored 10 goals, and got 11 assists. Now, what I said earlier about how he was one of the last of the old way of doing things, paying big money for an established player and giving them a huge salary, let's dive into that a bit. We've heard the weekly and annual numbers, but the total gross pay of his contract with Chelsea is approximately £84 million, just £16.9 million per year times 5. Now, he likely won't play for Chelsea ever again. So the deal that they gave Sterling costs as follows. And remember, these are approximate numbers based on the information that's out there currently. With 81 appearances, that's about £1.03 million per appearance. With 5,321 minutes, that's cost Chelsea £15,786 per minute of football. Per goal, he has 19 of them, so around £4.4 million. And per assist, for our final measurement, that's divided amongst the £84 million, so £5.6 million per assist. And look, the numbers get even crazier if you were to factor in his transfer fee of £47 to £50 million, which makes the total investment into Sterling about £131 million, not including his bonuses, which were a little too inconsistent from source to source, so I didn't bother including them.
The moment at Chelsea, and it looks increasingly likely that Romelu Lukaku is going to go back to Inter Milan on loan. Chelsea are in the market to sign someone who can play in those advanced positions.
Now, there is some context as to why he was signed in the summer of 2022. He provided invaluable experience and a winning mentality that Tuchel would have wanted at Chelsea. Chelsea were starting to purchase very young players that season, and so Sterling was seen as someone who was a standard raiser, a leader for them, and someone who has a ton of Premier League experience amongst this crop of players that were coming from all over the place. Now, let's make something absolutely clear. It's not Sterling's fault that Chelsea agreed to this mammoth contract. It's not his fault that he was given such unbelievable compensation when there were already murmurs of his levels declining amongst Manchester City supporters. Jump ahead 2 years to the summer of 2024, and he is placed in the bomb squad as Chelsea are looking to thin out their squad a bit. A loan to Arsenal in January does nothing to move the needle. He barely plays, he barely has an impact with 0 Premier League goals. He just got 1 against Bolton in the League Cup for Arsenal. There was never an option to make Sterling's move permanent as far as we understand, but clearly, if he found his old form, Arsenal may have tried to negotiate something that made sense financially for all parties considering he was a 30-year-old player, but he wasn't ever able to elevate himself above the likes of Gabriel Martinelli or Leandro Trossard, let alone someone like Bukayo Saka. Instead, Arsenal looked to one of his Chelsea teammates, Inoni Madueke, and you can see that this was the right move. The loan move for Sterling, however, had the opposite effect that he would have hoped and that Chelsea would have hoped for as well. Instead of showing that he still had that dog in him, the net outcome was that he isn't someone that clubs can roll the dice on. He'd perhaps argue that he wasn't given time to show his quality, but having gone through Liverpool and spending time at Manchester City under Guardiola, he knows better than most just how important it is to make the most of the minutes that you are given. So he didn't necessarily grab the bull by the horns.
I'm not saying that Raheem is no good player, but I prefer different kind of wingers.
And that plays a big role if you look at the wingers that Maresca does have. With the pace declining in Sterling, he doesn't hold a candle to their current crop of wingers such as Pedro Neto or Garnacho or Estevão when it comes to speed in the counterattack. When it comes to playmaking abilities, he doesn't have the composure and passing ability to play inside in the areas that someone like Cole Palmer operates in. Now, for someone like Raheem Sterling, the pace that he had was such a big aspect of his game. The physical advantage that he had, because he isn't that big, was his ability to get some separation between himself and his marker, whether it's beating a player to the ball in the box with his acceleration or getting in behind. At his peak at Manchester City, where he scored 131 goals in 339 appearances, winning 4 Premier League titles along the way, he was doing exactly that, peaking around 2018 or 2019 for my money for both club and country. But as his speed dropped, he had to be even more clinical in front of goal. He had to be even more efficient. And with a lack of composure at times, we started to see him decline bit by bit around 2021. He went from scoring 31 goals for City in the 2019-20 season to 14 and 17 in the following season, almost half. It dropped further at Chelsea, halved again to 9 goals, then 10, then left out. Not only that, but with his declining form, he was beginning to get left out of England squads as well, not even making it into Southgate's Euro 2024 squad, the first tournament he'd missed since becoming part of the England setup for the 2014 World Cup, and that was due to a mix of injuries as well as declining form. No doubt this will have rocked his confidence even more, which ties back to the summer of 2024, where all of these aspects combine to make him a player that Maresca isn't interested in bringing into the Chelsea fold as the new manager looks to start a successful new era at a club in transition. Now, Maresca was initially pressed on his treatment of players like Sterling, seen as being brutal in not allowing them to train with the first team.
This is not my problem. I'm here to take decision and to think who they are the best for us. If they have 6-year contract, but I don't like them, they can have 20 years contract. I don't care.
Now, allegedly this last summer, he turned down a potential loan to Bayern Munich or Bayer Leverkusen because he wanted to stay in London for family reasons. Fair enough, right? I mean, he has no obligation to leave the country. I mean, the Arsenal loan was so lucrative to him because he could stay with his family in London. Although, allegedly, clubs like Fulham, West Ham, and Palace, London clubs, wanted to take him on loan, but Sterling was more interested in going abroad than staying in the Premier League, but then again, in the end, he wanted to stay near his family. His want to stay with them overruled everything. And so, he continued at Chelsea's bomb squad, with the PFA investigating the kind of conditions that he and Disasi were being subjected to, as it came to be known that they had to train at completely different times from the main squad so that they wouldn't run into each other at the training ground. The PFA ultimately said that they were satisfied with the discussions they had with Chelsea, as well as the training conditions they observed that Sterling and Disasi had available to them. However, when this came to light, Maresca had to field more questions again about how hard it was for Sterling and the others who aren't included in the first team, how training on their own without a chance at playing the sport they love could affect their mental health. And his answer does paint an interesting picture. It started an interesting discussion.
My father is 75 years old, and for 50 years, he has been fisherman, working for 2 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock in the morning. This is hard in life.
Because, yes, of course, that's the reality for most of the world. You work every day, whether you want to or not. You're probably overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated, and you don't have much comfort in your life. What Maresca said isn't wrong. That is hard compared to what a Premier League player does for their work. And yes, I'm sure a very, very high percentage of people would gladly swap realities with Raheem Sterling. Hell, Sterling himself no doubt acknowledges what a privilege it is to not have to play competitively and to collect the amount of money that he does weekly. Surely that's not lost on him. But at the same time, I think completely ignoring the human mental side of things is a bit out of touch in a sense as well. Sure, his situation is incomparable to the average person. I absolutely agree with that. So then let's compare it to his peers. And when you do that, his situation absolutely sucks. It's terrible. Now, in saying that, you can see how this situation is multifaceted. There's no right or wrong. There's a lot of sides to it, because if Sterling wanted to move, he could. He could have accepted a loan away. He could have lowered his wage demands to get a move elsewhere, whether that be to Saudi Arabia or, my prediction from a year ago, Turkey. I mean, he just seemed like a Galatasaray signing. I could picture him there. So ultimately, if he wanted to, he could get out of Chelsea. And I think that is where people start to lose their empathy when it comes to Raheem Sterling. It's so bizarre to see a Premier League player of his former stature in this kind of scenario. It's sort of been the perfect storm for him, arriving at a chaotic time in Chelsea's history. And hey, why wouldn't you accept a deal like that? Then there's a merry-go-round of managers. Some rate him, some don't. But couple that with injuries and a loss of pace, which leads to a loss of confidence and declining numbers, and suddenly he isn't the automatic starter he used to be. Now throw in a young, ambitious manager who can't afford to worry about the careers of aging players, who is overlooking a squad that represents a new direction that the club as a whole is going in, a younger, less costly wage-wise direction for the most part, and Raheem Sterling becomes the ghost of Stamford Bridge. Or maybe a better way to look at it, a statue or a monument to the very early, far more chaotic scattergun transfer days of Chelsea's time under Todd Boehly. Raheem Sterling isn't the villain, but he also isn't quite a victim, given the alleged escape ropes he had to consider this past summer. But he is forgotten, and with the amount of money that is still being paid out to him, his current irrelevance is some of the most expensive in football history. Thanks, as always, for watching. Do drop a like or a comment to let me know your thoughts and help this video in the dog-eat-dog world of the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you guys in another video soon. Take care.